Hello, I'm Panos Kotzathanasis, and this is Asian Movie Pass Talks. Today I'm here with Grace and Marko, and we will be talking about one of the most discussed movies, not disgusted, discussed movies of the previous year, Past Lives. So, how are you guys?
Quite well, thank you.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah, it's good. It's a little rainy here in California, but it's good. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me start with saying a few things about the movie in case anyone has not seen it yet, which is strange because I think everyone has seen it by now, but okay. So the story begins in 2000 and we are introduced to two childhood friends, Na Young and Ha Sung, who find themselves separated after the former's family emigrates from South Korea to Canada. 12 years later, Ha-sung has finished his military service and Na-young has emigrated to New York City, where she has changed her name to Nora. One day, she discovers on Facebook that Ha-sung had commented on a post that he was looking for Na-young, unaware of her name change. They reconnect through video calls but are unable to visit each other, as Nora will attend a writer's retreat and Ha-sung is moving to China for a language exchange. At her retreat, Nora meets Arthur and they fall in love. Ha-sung also meets a woman and they begin dating. And 12 years later, once more, the two finally get to meet in New York. So, Marko, you are one of the champions of the film. Why don't you start and tell us what you liked about it?
Well, the film is often seen as a romance movie, which is a bit shallow, if not downright wrong. It's more than a romance movie. It's a movie about life itself. And it's completely sincere. It's autobiographical in all the major details, because Celine Song was also born in Korea. She's a daughter of a filmmaker who emigrated to Canada and to United States, and she, just like Nora, she works in theater as a playwright and stage director. Uh, so it's a story about identity, about personal identity that can and cannot have anything with like more fixed identity concepts like national identity or so and so on. So it's a story about how much of Na Young is left in Nora, how much all of us are persons that we used to be, and how much we all change and forge our new identities in different life stages.
Mhm. And what did you think about this concept of soulmates that seems to be a bit central and the rather different presentation of it, let's say?
The concept of Inyun uh, goes pretty much throughout the movie, especially its second half. Like, and it's, of course, I mean, it's in the title, but uh, can also our lives be past lives? Can I don't know, like since we change from the childhood to adulthood, um, how much are we connected to ourselves, not just other people, and how the functions and the way we see ourselves change. Of course, Nora is connected both to Ha Sung. They're they had a significant connection in their childhood or in their past life, maybe, if such thing actually exists. But she also has connection to Arthur in her present life, and Arthur and Haesung uh, are also connected in a way, or are connecting in a way. So they also share or will share their portion of Inyun.
Grace, what did you think about the film?
Um,
Because you're
well,
also like you have some similarities with the protagonist, right? Considering you're Korean descent and now you're in the US.
yeah. Yeah, so it's a really interesting film, and I feel like it kind of haunted me for a lot of last year. I remember when it premiered at Sundance, and everyone was talking about it on the street. Um, and then I watched it for the first time when it came to San Francisco, at the Castro Theater just around this time. It was uh, like right around March, April. And by that point, the film holds some sort of personal significance to me because I had seen this right after I ran into the first person I ever dated. And then I saw another date at the theater. And I was like, this is kind of weird, right? To like see this movie that's about, I mean, Marko might say it's not about love, but in a lot of ways it is, right? It's not about just like the self that grows, but it's about
It's
growing with and beyond like people for you. Um,
about love, but it's not a romance movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it was a very strange sort of experience, I think, when I watched this film. Especially upon exiting the theater and seeing somebody that I dated just a few weeks ago who like also there and talking to their friends and they're like, "Oh, do you want to come meet me?" But I have mixed feelings about the film. I think it is worth a lot of the praise in one way. But another way, I don't think it's that new, as a lot of people are saying or talking about on the street. Um, Other than the fact that it is a Korean diaspora subject, I'm not quite so sure. I think this is a really good debut for a feature, for the director, but I'm not so sure how different this is from like a Richard Linklater film or Hong Sang-soo film, or I mean, it seems to very heavily reference like the sort of melancholia that we see in like Wong Kar-wai movies. Um, Other than the setting and the fact that it feels at some points like it has to make a joke to lighten up the mood, which in a way is very appealing for a diaspora audience. Um, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, but like I'm not sure. Like it definitely gives the film some levity, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, okay, but did we really need that? Can we just, you know, like steep in the melancholia of it all? But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Well, I guess in general I liked it. I like this thing with the concept of soulmates and how it finally is presented in a movie in a realistic way and not like. Okay, as I was watching the film and particularly the ending, I was thinking of The Notebook. You remember that Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling film, which
Mm.
essentially says exactly the opposite. I mean, The Notebook says that no matter what happens, the soulmates will eventually come together. But this is like a realistic presentation of what happens in life just because you were connected with someone in your childhood, or it seems that you're connected, doesn't mean that you're gonna end up with him or her, and because usually that's not the logical choice, let's say, or whatnot. And okay, I really like that part. I think the ending was absolutely great. The way what happens there. I mean, the moment that we're we're revealing the whole movie, but as I said, most people must have seen it by now. But the moment she cries in the arms of let's say one of the two guys, I think that was a truly great scene for me because all of her mentality was just shown in that scene, and I was really impressed by it. On the other hand, and essentially because I agree with both of you on most levels, but for me there is a part of the movie, like after the two Koreans they find each other and then they lose each other, and until the point that they meet again, that I was really, really bored with the movie. It's about 40 minutes that I thought that would be better if it wasn't there at all. I didn't. I thought that part was very tiring, and that's maybe the biggest problem of the movie for me. And also the acting of the Korean guy, Teo Yu, that's a bit very wooden, and it didn't make much sense for me. So that's more or less what I didn't like. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Marco, Grace, please.
Oh, no, it's just funny because it seems like whenever people talk about Yuto's like a performance, everyone's just like, well, but he was really hot though, which he
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marco,
Yeah,
anything? What do you think?
the concept of the character is such. He is pretty much square, a bit wooden person who plays by the rules, and he wants something, but he's pretty much chasing an illusion in a way. I don't know. It didn't even the middle part. That's clearly a bridge of sorts. Um, with her meeting Arthur and everything. Um, I wasn't bored by that even in my second viewing today.
Mm, mm,
I don't know, it kind of works. It pretty much mimics life. And I'm also an immigrant, so I really connected to the film on that level. Okay, my distance was much shorter. Uh, but yeah, and I mean, like we all are. I'm aging, getting older and older, and I just came back from my hometown. So yeah,
mm, mm. Okay, okay. And in general, what did you think about the acting, Grace?
I think like in one way, like Yuto's acting is not the greatest, but I also think part of it is in direct contrast with the animatedness of John Magaro when he's playing Arthur. And that kind of, I guess for us, is supposed to help us redirect and reorient our like attention, right? And being like, oh yeah, like the main character, like I guess in one way you can say that perhaps it was deliberate. His more or less stoic acting, because it allows us to focus on Greta Lee and her personal growth, and this allows him to also just like step back, be the side character, and also step even further back and be a sort of remain more fascinating as an idea rather than as the person himself. Um, but on the other hand, you're right. It was kind of boring to watch. And I agree with that as well. So I'm not so sure how much of it was about stage direction than and I guess intent within the film than it is about like his actual capacity or ability to act. But um I do agree that in one way it works for narratively, diegetically within the film, but on the other hand, yeah, it's hard to watch.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm, mm. Yeah, but okay. I regarding
acting
your, please, Marco, please go.
acting in general, I think with this kind of movie that is so well written. uh, in detail, pretty much every other concept, every other aspect of it comes to its place. Uh, and so does the acting. I mean, like it's pretty much deliberate to put the focus on Greta Lee as Nora. John Magaro is very useful as a bit of a, like the writer cliche, the Jewish American sad sack writer. So it kind of worked, at least for me, to have him, there in that way.
Yeah, and I definitely do think that's very deliberate to put like I guess not just the fact like to make like the white husband as like the decentered comic side relief when a lot of the time in American narrative film it's the opposite and you see like this person of color or like an Asian person being like the side character for comic relief. I do think that was very deliberate and that was really well done. And I guess one more thing to add too is thinking about like on Greta Lee's acting. Something that a lot of my friends and I discussed after the movie was just like her bilingualism. And I think she hits just the perfect note. And I don't know how much of this is acting or how much of this is actually just personal as well, but of being fluent, but also there's slight things where it's like, oh, but she hasn't lived in Korea in a long time, kind of a thing. And I think that for Korean speakers, at least, that adds like another level of authenticity to the character. Yeah.
Well, I also thought that Greta Lee was pretty great. I mean, the movie was focused almost completely on her, and she delivered in all aspects. I agree with you. What you are saying, she's excellent in it. And also, I agree about John Magaro. He's the archetypical third wheel. I mean, in scenes like the one in the bar in particular, which is, for me is a very funny scene, essentially, how much he becomes the third wheel, actually. But I think he delivers in every aspect, even when he's not talking. In this scene in particular, he's really great. And also, the scene in the bed where he spills his guts out, how does he feel that the two Koreans should be together, and this is how he feels, and he is very real and vulnerable at that moment. I thought that his acting at that moment was pretty great. So yeah, acting wise, those two were really good.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I love that scene as well. Yeah.
So, okay, let's have some more provocative questions. So, number one, uh, is this an Asian film or an American film in the end? Marko, what do you think?
It's a film. It's a Celine Song film. It's very personal film, and it might be her only film because she's into other stuff. So it kind of defies the categorization. It is as Asian as it is American, as it is, I don't know, global in a way. I mean, the same question could be asked with another Korean
Minari,
group
let's say, over here.
identity film like Return to Seoul. Is it a Korean film? Is it a French film? And
That's a French film for me, man. Like all the way from the beginning to the end, that's a French film. But okay, okay, I know what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, it's a film.
Yeah.
It's her film.
Grace, what do you think?
I think like these sort of categories are really complicated, right? And in a way, one can even argue that it's a Canadian film because Celine herself is Canadian. If you really want to get to like the dirty details, and even we could argue that Return to Seoul is like a Cambodian film, right? Because Davy Cho is Cambodian, right? Like so, these sort of ideas of like, oh, is this an Asian film or is this an American film? I don't know if that's particularly the sort of framework we should be looking at this as much as maybe thinking like this is a transnational film, and I think that's why it is so appealing to so many people. It's a transnational film about like Nora's personal journey from Korea to Toronto to New York, but also about like what it means to date internationally or outside of like your ethnicity, what it means to work in multiple cultures and multiple languages. And I think it's an interesting question to ask though, like because there's another film that came out recently called Mimang, which is also of like a similar theme. It's about like three people who talk about how times have changed, and they're all somewhat interested in each other over time, and it all takes place in the city of Seoul. Like that, though, it's not so much about the transition from one location or culture to the next, but it's just about one one's relationship to the city over time. And so and that way I feel like these sort of and that way I feel like, yeah, the sort of geographic delineation of like, is this American or is this North American or is this Asian is not as pertinent perhaps as thinking like, how can we explore transnational cinemas in new and exciting ways? And I think this film does a really good job of that.
Yeah. Well, I should mention that actually as a production, it is classified, let's say, as an American, like it's not co-production.
Yeah.
Okay, although CJ Entertainment is somewhat involved, but it's mentioned as an American production. But I actually agree with both of you. Maybe we could say that, okay, we are critics and this is what we usually fight about, the origin of the film and whatnot. But I think if we were to categorize it, I think Asian American is pretty good and probably in the top of the category with films like Minari, let's say, or yeah, nothing else comes to mind right now. But yeah, I think it's this new category it's getting better and better, I think, this time.
A lot
Yeah.
of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also strategic, right? Like with the Oscars and the Oscar nomination, and not being cast as like a foreign language film, because I think that's what happened to The Farewell like a few years ago, which is also an Asian American film, but a lot of it was filmed in China or was done in Mandarin, and was again about like these sort of diaspora cultural differences. And it was I mean, I remember there was a lot of outcry about like, oh, but this is a uniquely Asian American problem in Asia. But yeah, I think it is also strategic for the marketers to call this film American because then it can be considered for best picture and not just best foreign language film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. Who were you rooting for in the end from the two guys? Who you wanted to get the girl? Marko?
No, it's I mean, it was pretty obvious from like the first half of the movie that she is drawn to Sung, but not romantically. She's drawn to him as he's drawn to her own childhood and memories and I don't know, like uncertain history on I don't know, like so it was never a mystery that she will end up with Arthur.
Oh, really? You were so sure? Oh, okay.
And I'm pretty sure because of the way she spoke about him when even before they met, the way she spoke about him to her mother over the phone, and when she met him, and how Korean is he, how like very square, typical, I don't know, like business competitive, like non-artistic. I don't know, but okay, she had a crush on him, but he became one sort of person, and they're not compatible, and she knows it, and it's maybe the issue here is also the inherent patriarchy that's also present in Asia and in Korea that dictates him I don't know, want the girl.
Mm, mm. Okay.
Well, he knows that she's completely different person now, and that he probably cannot understand her and her way of life.
Mm. But okay, despite this predictability, which one would you want to get the girl in the end? Which one would you prefer, personally?
Well, whatever the girl wants.
Okay, there you are so politically correct. Wow.
Not usual, but here it's about. I mean, it's all about her. It's
Okay,
not about either of them.
okay, okay. Grace?
Um, I'll be a little less political, perhaps. I kind of hope that they would have one steamy night together, and
Mm,
then she would stay with her husband. Because and I guess maybe that was also part of my disappointment. For something like In the Mood for Love, they somewhat go over the edge and they somewhat cross that boundary, and then they're like, oh, actually, let's pedal back. But the fact that Garali Nora doesn't do that at all, I was like, wait, no, but at least for the movie magic, spend one like night in a somewhat sexual setting and then after that be like, oh yeah, okay, that's over and we can move on from here now.
mm,
um I guess in that way I felt like I was like, oh, I wish there was a bit more of a cathartic release. And but I think part of the strength of the film is that it doesn't allow you to get there, right? So um but that's what I ideally would have wanted.
mm, mm. Okay.
Uh, there are moments like very gentle, subtle details, like in the way they hug each other when they meet, and the way they are touching the same bar handle while riding the subway. And like there is some chemistry, some electricity, but it's more significant that way than to go to, I don't know, some sort of movie cliche.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some tension, but there's no release. And ideally, I would have liked to see just a little bit of like, we'll just do this thing, forget everything else, like what happens here stays here kind of a thing. Um, but they were much better people than I am, so
Well, I was thinking that at some point that it might go for an open ending, like leave it
Mm.
to us to decide, like leave them, like they will be in the middle of the street, one on the other one side and the other guy on the other side, and she will
Mm.
think who to go with and end like that. But in the end, the way that the film ended, I was satisfied. At that moment, I realized that I would prefer for her to go with her husband and.
Yeah.
Fuck this whole thing about soulmates and you have to be with someone that fate has dictated for you to be with. So, yeah, for me, that was really satisfying. And since we are talking about this concept that has been done to death in romantic films in particular, do you believe even a bit in this soulmate thing? Does fate dictates who you end up with, or is there something like that? Marko, what do you think?
Well, as a married person, no.
Okay, okay. Grace, now you live
um
in America. Is there someone from Korea that you are bound to be with by fate?
I cannot answer that question at this time because it's being recorded.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. All right.
But yeah, it's this is not just about romance. This is just on my mind because I also just watched Dune 2, but I think that's kind of the whole question as well. Like how much of it is like you making your own fate, or how much of it is you believing in the fate that you must fulfill? Um, and I think when it comes to soulmates, I mean, I think a lot of it's just about choice and commitment. Like maybe there is fate for you to like come in contact with each other, and there is an order in which that happens, that initial encounter. But what you do with it from there, I think, is totally up to you.
Well, for me, I really don't want to believe in it, being very pragmatic person. But the way I ended up with my girlfriend now, it's making it really hard not to believe that a thing like that exists. So I don't know what's happening there. It's still ambiguous for me. I will tell you probably right before I die. I will be sure, but for now, I cannot say that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I guess that's it, unless anyone would like to add anything else about the film. I don't know. Mark,
Oh, just like
yes?
what do you guys think will happen with the Oscars?
Uh, Marko, you are the expert. You do an analysis every year about who will win the Oscars for a betting company, is it? Or
I just bet, but I don't think that. I think that they won't go and repeat uh, the, let's say, the Asian American thing from the last year and from years before. So I don't think that it's a serious contender for Oscars. I have no idea which film will win, because this year we have two, I would say, proper masterpieces and one near masterpiece at Oscars. One of them
please elaborate.
we are discussing, uh, but I don't think that any of those will actually win an Oscar, because the Academy is, let's say, a political organization, and it's mainly American, and neither of those three films are like proper American films.
Which ones do you mean? Sorry.
So it's Past Lives, it's Zone of Interest, and Anatomy of the Fall.
Oh,
Really?
So, I think neither of them, and they might even do the cop out thing and award Oppenheimer.
Uh, well, I think
yeah.
it's the favorite. Like Oppenheimer looks like, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like everyone that I've talked to has mentioned Oppenheimer, um, and Poor Things because of, I guess, all the nominations that they've received. But
Yeah, maybe they want to play edgy,
Hmm.
mm, yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it. I think that it got all of the recognition already with nominations. Past Lives.
Hmm. Hmm.
mm, yeah. I mean, especially as a first time feature, like that's already quite a lot, right? To have gotten this far.
Hmm. And also because production-wise, it's really a small film, essentially, right? Like
Yeah.
three actors, not very much, in the way of, you know, now it looks it doesn't look expensive, let's say, in the way like Parasite was expensive, you could see that, or I don't know,
Yeah,
Drive My Car is just because the fact it's 3 hours, it should be a bit more expensive. But Past Lives, it's really small film, so just being there, I think, it's an achievement, I guess.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. And the fact that the person at center, I don't know, I guess like especially the fact that the person at center is not like the Hollywood mainstay, and I think this is really, really cool. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, but it's also nominated about the script, right? So you think there is any chance there? Again, I guess difficult.
maybe, but very slim, very slim.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I have to double check the script nominations, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, guys, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for being here. So this was ASEAN Movie Pulse Talks. Thank you for listening, watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Okay, from Panos, Grace, and Marko, have a nice night. Bye.
Bye.